curiosity. Word traveled fast in a police department. By lunch, everyone would know what happened. He drove home in the middle of the day, something he never did. His wife Linda was surprised to see him walk through the door at 11 in the morning. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately, reading his face. He told her everything. The arrest, the pills, the grandmother, the lawsuit. Linda listened without interrupting, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh, Ray," she said when he finished. "That poor family." "I was just doing my job," Raymond said, but it sounded hollow now. "Were you? Or were you doing what you've always done? Making quick judgments and moving on?" Her words stung because they were true. How many times had he come home and told her about arrests he'd made, suspicious people he'd stopped, without ever thinking about what happened to them after? They were just cases, just reports, just numbers in a system. That night, Raymond couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Trevor sitting in that cell, missing his first day of work. He thought about the old woman, Dorothy Washington, running out of her heart medication. He thought about the photo in Trevor's wallet. The next morning, he did something he'd never done in 12 years as a cop. He looked up the Washington family's address. It took him 3 hours to work up the courage to drive there. The apartment building was old but well-maintained. Raymond climbed the stairs to the second floor, his heart pounding harder with each step. What was he going to say? What could he possibly say? He knocked on the door. It took a minute, but it finally opened. Trevor stood there, and the look on his face went from confusion to anger in a split second. "You've got to be kidding me," Trevor said, starting to close the door. "Wait, please. I just want to talk." "Talk? You want to talk now? Where was the talking when you were putting me in handcuffs? Where was the talking when I was trying to explain about my grandmother? I know I messed up." "Messed up?" Trevor's voice rose. "I lost my job because of you. My grandmother is in the hospital because of you. You didn't mess up, officer. You destroyed our lives." "Who's at the door, baby?" A weak voice called from inside. Trevor hesitated, then stepped back. "It's that cop." "The one who arrested me?" "Well, don't leave him standing in the hallway. Let him come in." Trevor looked like he wanted to argue, but he opened the door wider. "My grandmother just got home from the hospital yesterday. If you upset her, I swear I won't, I promise." The apartment was small but spotless. Family photos covered every available surface. There was a worn couch, a small TV, and in a recliner by the window sat Dorothy Washington. She looked tiny and frail, an oxygen tube running to her nose, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "Mrs. Washington," Raymond said, taking off his cap. "I'm Detective Cole." "I know who you are," she said, gesturing to the couch. "Sit down." Raymond sat, feeling completely out of his depth. Trevor stood behind his grandmother's chair, his arms crossed, eyes hard. "I came to apologize," Raymond began. "I made a mistake. A serious mistake. Your grandson was telling the truth and I didn't listen." "No, you didn't," Dorothy said. "You want to know why?" Raymond nodded. "Because you'd already made up your mind about what kind of person Trevor was the second you saw him. Young black man, old car, wrong neighborhood. You didn't see my grandson. You saw a stereotype." The words hit Raymond like bullets. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't. She was right. "Trevor raised himself, you know," Dorothy continued, her voice soft but steady. "His mama, my daughter, she died when he was 15. Cancer. His daddy had already left years before. I took him in, but I was working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. This boy could have gone down any path. Lord knows he had every excuse to, but he chose different." Raymond looked at Trevor, who was staring at the floor. He graduated high school, stayed out of trouble, worked whatever jobs he could find to help with bills. That warehouse job, that was supposed to be his break. Good pay, benefits, a chance to save some money, maybe go to community college. "I'm so sorry," Raymond said, and he meant it with everything in him. "Sorry doesn't get him his job back." Trevor said quietly, "Sorry doesn't pay our rent." Dorothy reached back and patted Trevor's hand. "No, it doesn't, but it's a start." Raymond sat there for the next hour, listening. Really listening. Dorothy told him about raising Trevor, about their struggles, about their small victories. Trevor talked about how scared he'd been during the arrest, how humiliated he'd felt. When Raymond finally left, he felt like a different person. The uniform he'd worn with pride for 12 years suddenly felt heavy. The badge sitting on Rodriguez's desk felt like it belonged to someone else. He drove home slowly, seeing the streets differently now. Every person walking, every car passing, they all had stories. They all had grandmothers who loved them, dreams they were chasing, struggles he knew nothing about. That night he told Linda he wanted to make things right, whatever it took. Then do it, she said simply. But understand that making it right might not fix everything. Some things once broken don't go back to the way they were. Raymond nodded. He was beginning to understand that now. He'd made a mistake in 30 seconds that had consequences lasting far longer. The question was whether he could learn from it, whether he could change. For the first time in his career, Raymond Cole wasn't sure who he was anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what needed to happen. Raymond couldn't stop thinking about that conversation with Dorothy Washington. Her words played on repeat in his mind, especially at night when he couldn't sleep. You didn't see my grandson. You saw a stereotype. He'd been on administrative leave for 2 weeks now. Most cops in his situation would have stayed home, laid low, waited for the investigation to blow over. But Raymond found himself driving back to that apartment building on the south side, not to apologize again. He'd said sorry. Words were easy. He needed to do something real. This time he didn't come empty-handed. He'd made some phone calls, used some connections. His brother-in-law managed a distribution center across town. They weren't hiring, but Raymond had begged. He'd explained the situation, left out the parts that made him look bad, and finally got a promise of an interview for Trevor. When Trevor opened the door and saw Raymond standing there, his face hardened immediately. What do you want now? I got you a job interview, Raymond said quickly before Trevor could shut the door. My brother-in-law runs a distribution center. It's similar work to the warehouse job. Maybe even better pay. Trevor stared at him. You're serious? Dead serious. Interview's Thursday at 10 if you want it. I wrote down the address and the manager's name. Raymond held out a piece of paper. Trevor didn't take it right away. Why are you doing this? Because I messed up your life. Because saying sorry isn't enough. Because your grandmother was right about me. Slowly, Trevor reached out and took the paper. He looked at it for a long moment, then back at Raymond. This doesn't make us even, Trevor said. I know, but it's something. Trevor nodded slightly. Thursday at 10. Wear a button-up shirt if you have one. Ask for Daniel Chen, tell him I sent you. As Raymond turned to leave, Trevor called out, Hey, thank you. I mean it, Raymond just nodded. Thank you felt wrong when he was the reason Trevor needed help in the first place. But that was just the start. Raymond began showing up at the Washington apartment every Saturday. At first, Trevor barely talked to him. Dorothy was more welcoming, but Raymond could see the wariness in her eyes. He didn't blame them. The first Saturday, he noticed the kitchen faucet was dripping. He asked if he could fix it. Dorothy hesitated, then agreed. He drove to the hardware store, bought what he needed, and spent an hour under the sink. The second Saturday, he brought groceries. Dorothy protested, said she didn't need charity, but Raymond insisted it wasn't charity. It was payment for what he'd done wrong. The third Saturday, he helped Trevor replace the taillight on his car. They worked in silence mostly, the only sound being tools clanking and traffic passing by. When they finished, Trevor stepped back and looked at the car. Got the job, by the way, Trevor said, not looking at Raymond. At the distribution center. Start Monday. That's great, Raymond said, genuinely relieved. Yeah, thanks for that. Trevor paused, wiping grease from his hands. But you know it doesn't fix everything, right? I know. I still have a record now. Still shows up when people run background checks. Still have to explain what happened every time. Raymond hadn't thought about that. The arrest was on Trevor's record, even though the charges would likely be dropped. Another consequence that would follow him for years. I'm going to talk to the prosecutor, Raymond said. See if we can get it expunged. Removed completely. Can you do that? I don't know. But I'm going to try. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. The visits became less awkward. Trevor started asking Raymond to help with other things around the apartment. A stuck window. A loose cabinet door. Small things that Dorothy couldn't do herself and Trevor didn't have time for. One Saturday, Dorothy invited Raymond to stay for dinner. It was just spaghetti and garlic bread. Nothing fancy. But Raymond felt more honored than he had at any police ceremony. They sat around the small dining table, and Dorothy told stories about Trevor growing up. How he'd tried to cook dinner once when he was 16 and nearly burned down the kitchen. How he'd worked 3 part-time jobs his senior year to help pay bills. How he'd cried the day his mother died but then got up the next morning and went to school anyway because that's what she would have wanted. Raymond listened and realized how much of life he'd been missing. In 12 years as a cop, he'd seen people at their worst moments. Traffic stops, arrests, crime scenes. He'd forgotten that everyone had these other moments too. Birthday dinners. Inside jokes. Quiet Saturday mornings. Can I ask you something? Trevor said during dessert, which was store-bought cookies Dorothy had arranged on a plate. Anything, Raymond said. Why'd you become a cop? Raymond thought about it. My father was a cop. His father, too. I guess I thought it's what I was supposed to do. Help people. Protect the community. And do you help people? It was a fair question. An honest question. Raymond wanted to say yes immediately, but he stopped himself. I thought I did, but lately I'm not so sure. I think maybe I've been protecting some people and hurting others without even realizing it. Dorothy nodded slowly. That's the first smart thing I've heard you say. Trevor almost smiled at that. Almost after dinner, Raymond helped wash dishes. He told them about his own life, about his wife Linda, and how she'd been pushing him to think differently about his job for years. About his partner who'd retired last year, burnt out and angry at the world, about how becoming a cop had felt like putting on armor, and he'd forgotten there were actual people underneath his badge. You know what bothers me most? Trevor said, drying a plate. It's not even the arrest. It's that you didn't see me. You looked right at me and didn't see a person. Just saw what you expected to see. You're right, Raymond said. And I can't take that back. But I'm trying to see differently now. Are you, though? Or are you just feeling guilty about this one time you got caught? The question hung in the air. Raymond put down the dish he was washing and turned to face Trevor. Honestly, I don't know yet. I want to believe I'm changing for real. But maybe you're right. Maybe this is just guilt. All I know is that meeting you and your grandmother, it's opened my eyes to things I was blind to before. Trevor studied him for a long moment. My grandmother likes you. I can tell. She thinks you're trying. What do you think? I think time will tell. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. Raymond nodded. That was fair. More than fair. Before he left that night, Dorothy grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so frail. I want to show you something, she said, leading him to a wall of photos. She pointed to one of a young girl in a graduation gown. That's my daughter, Trevor's mother. She was going to be a nurse, had all these dreams. Raymond looked at the photo, at the bright smile and hopeful eyes. She died believing in people. Dorothy continued. Even when people let her down, even when the system failed her over and over, she still believed things could get better. You know why? Why? Because she believed people could change. She believed that one person deciding to see things differently could start a ripple, could change other people's minds. Dorothy looked up at Raymond with those sharp eyes of hers. So here's my question for you, Detective Cole. Are you going to be that ripple? Or are you just going to go back to your old life once this all blows over? Raymond looked at the photo again, then at Trevor standing in the doorway, then back at Dorothy. I want to be different, he said quietly. I want to be better. Then be better, Dorothy said simply. Don't just want it. Do it. Raymond drove home that night with Dorothy's words echoing in his mind. He thought about his career, about all the stops he'd made, all the arrests. How many other Trevors had there been? How many times had he seen a stereotype instead of a person? When he got home, Linda was reading on the couch. She looked up as he came in. How'd it go? I think I'm starting to understand something, Raymond said, sitting next to her. I've been wrong about a lot of things for a long time. Linda set down her book and took his hand. Understanding is the first step. What matters is what you do next. I don't even know if I want to be a cop anymore. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. The words felt strange and scary and somehow freeing all at once. Then figure it out, Linda said. But don't run away from it either. Maybe the police department needs someone who's learned what you've learned. Someone who can help other officers see what you're starting to see. Raymond thought about that. Maybe she was right. Maybe the answer wasn't to quit, but to change the system from inside. To be that ripple Dorothy talked about. He just hoped it wasn't too late to start. The call came on a Thursday morning. Captain Rodriguez wanted to see Raymond in his office. The investigation was over. It was time to hear the verdict. Raymond drove to the station with his stomach in knots. Linda had squeezed his hand before he left, told him whatever happened, they'd figure it out together. But Raymond knew this meeting would decide everything. His career, his future, maybe even who he was going to be. Rodriguez was waiting with another officer, Lieutenant Patricia Hayes from Internal Affairs. They both looked serious, official. Raymond sat down and tried to keep his hands steady. "The investigation is complete," Rodriguez said, sliding a folder across the desk. "The charges against Trevor Washington are being dropped completely. The arrest will be expunged from his record. The family has agreed not to pursue a lawsuit." Raymond felt a wave of relief, followed immediately by confusion. "They're not suing?" "No," Hayes said. "Mrs. Washington spoke with our attorneys. She said, and I'm quoting here, 'That officer is already punishing himself more than we ever could.'" Raymond felt his throat tighten. Even after everything, Dorothy was showing him more grace than he deserved. "However," Rodriguez continued, "there are consequences. You violated department protocol in several areas. You made assumptions without proper verification. You failed to adequately investigate the suspect's claims. There's a formal reprimand going in your file." "I understand," Raymond said. "You're being reinstated effective Monday. You can return to your regular duties." Raymond should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt empty. Return to regular duties, back to the same patrol routes, the same patterns, the same mindset that got him here in the first place. "Sir, I'd like to request a transfer." Rodriguez looked surprised. "A transfer? To where?" "Community Policing Division. I want to work with neighborhoods, build relationships, not just respond to calls and make arrests." Hayes and Rodriguez exchanged glances. Community policing was considered a soft assignment by most officers. It meant less action, more talking. Most cops saw it as a dead-end position. "Are you sure about this?" Rodriguez asked. "You're a good detective, Cole. You could make sergeant in a few years if you stay on track." "I'm sure. I need to do something different." "Be something different." Rodriguez studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll put in the paperwork. You start Monday in community policing." Raymond left the station feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He drove straight to the Washington apartment. He needed to tell them the news himself. Trevor answered the door, still in his work uniform from the distribution center. He looked tired but good. Employed, stable. "The charges are dropped," Raymond said. "Completely off your record. It'll be like the arrest never happened." Trevor's eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Seriously. Your grandmother talked to the lawyers. She said you two didn't want to sue." "Yeah, well, Grandma's always been too forgiving for her own good." But Trevor was smiling as he said it. "Come on in. She's going to want to hear this." Dorothy was in her chair by the window, reading glasses perched on her nose, working on a crossword puzzle. When Raymond told her the news, she just nodded calmly, like she'd known all along how it would turn out. "That's good," she said simply. "What about you? You get your job back?" "I did, but I'm transferring to community policing. I'm going to be working in neighborhoods, trying to build trust between residents and police." Dorothy set down her puzzle and looked at him over her glasses. "You mean that? You're really going to try to change things?" "I'm going to try. I don't know if I can change the whole system, but maybe I can help a few officers see things differently. Maybe I can stop the next me from making the same mistake." "That's all any of us can do," Dorothy said. "Plant seeds and hope they grow." Over the next few months, Raymond threw himself into his new role. Community policing was harder than he'd expected. It meant showing up to neighborhood meetings and listening to people's complaints about the police. It meant admitting when the department was wrong. It meant being patient when people didn't trust him. He started volunteering with a youth program that paired police officers with at-risk kids. He went to community centers and schools, not to give lectures about staying out of trouble, but to actually listen to what young people were going through. He began mentoring newer officers, sharing his story about Trevor and Dorothy. Some of them listened. Some of them thought he'd gone soft. Raymond didn't care anymore about being seen as tough or by the book. His old partner Stevens saw him at the station one day and shook his head. "I heard you transferred to community policing. What happened to you, Cole? You used to be a real cop." "I'm still a real cop," Raymond said. "I'm just trying to be a better one." "Better? You mean weaker? All that touchy-feely stuff doesn't keep people safe." Raymond thought about Trevor's face in the rearview mirror that night. About Dorothy in the hospital because of his mistake. About all the people he'd never seen as people. "I think it does, actually. I think seeing people as human keeps everyone safer. Including us." Stevens walked away, shaking his head, but Raymond didn't mind. He'd been Stevens once. Maybe Stevens would have his own Trevor Washington moment someday. Maybe not. All Raymond could do was his own work. He still visited the Washingtons most Saturdays. It had become a routine he looked forward to. Sometimes he helped with things around the apartment. Sometimes they just talked. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, just watched a game on TV together. One Saturday, Trevor asked if Raymond wanted to shoot hoops at the park. It was a warm spring afternoon, and the courts were busy with kids playing. They found an empty hoop at the edge and started taking shots. "You're terrible at this," Trevor said, laughing as Raymond missed his third shot in a row. "I'm a detective, not an athlete," Raymond said, but he was laughing too. They played for a while, just messing around, not keeping score. Some kids came over and asked to join. Soon there was a pickup game going. Raymond and Trevor on the same team against a group of teenagers. They lost badly. The kids were half their age and twice as fast. But Raymond couldn't remember the last time he'd had that much fun. Afterward, they sat on a bench catching their breath. Trevor was drinking from a water bottle, looking out at the park. "You know what's weird?" Trevor said. "6 months ago I hated you. Like really hated you. I thought about that arrest every single day. Couldn't stop thinking about what you took from me." "I don't blame you for that," Raymond said. "I'm not done. What's weird is that now I don't hate you anymore. I don't know what I feel exactly, but it's not hate." "What is it then?" Trevor thought about it. "I guess it's like I see you trying, and that matters. It doesn't erase what happened, but it matters." Raymond nodded. It was more than he deserved, but he was grateful for it. "Can I tell you something?" Raymond asked. "That night I arrested you. I went home and went to sleep like it was just another day. Just another arrest. I didn't think about you as a person with a life and dreams and people who loved you. You were just a case number to me. And now I think about that all the time. Every interaction I have with someone, I try to remember they're somebody's grandson, somebody's son, somebody's friend. They have good days and bad days. They have hopes and fears. They're people." "That should be obvious," Trevor said. "It should be, but somewhere along the way I forgot. The job made me forget. Or maybe I let myself forget because it was easier." They sat in silence for a while, watching kids play, listening to the sounds of the city around them. "My grandmother thinks you're going to do good things," Trevor said eventually. "She says you have a chance to help a lot of people because you learned this lesson." "I hope she's right. Me too. Because if you waste this, if you go back to how you were, then what was the point of any of it?" Raymond understood the weight of that question. He'd been given a second chance, but it came at the cost of Trevor's suffering. That wasn't something to take lightly. "I won't waste it," Raymond said. "I promise you that." Trevor stood up and extended his hand. Raymond shook it. And this time it didn't feel like forgiveness exactly. It felt like something newer, like the beginning of trust. As Raymond drove home that evening, he thought about the officer he used to be. That version of himself felt like a stranger now. He'd been so sure of everything back then. So confident in his judgments. So certain he was on the right side. Now he questioned everything. Every assumption. Every quick decision. Every instinct that told him to judge before understanding. It made the job harder in some ways. But it made him better at it in ways that actually mattered. He wasn't just enforcing laws anymore. He was serving people. Really serving them. The way he should have been all along. Linda noticed the change in him too. He smiled more, slept better, came home with stories about connecting with people instead of arresting them. "I'm proud of you," she said one night. "I know this hasn't been easy." "It's been the hardest thing I've ever done," Raymond admitted. "Looking at myself honestly. Admitting I was wrong. Changing how I see the world. But you did it. You're still doing it." Raymond hoped that would be enough. That this change in him would ripple outward the way Dorothy had talked about. That maybe, just maybe, he could help prevent another officer from making his mistake. He couldn't change the past, but he could shape the future. One conversation, one relationship, one moment of really seeing someone at a time. 6 months into his new assignment, Raymond got a call that would test everything he'd learned. It was a Friday evening just after sunset. Domestic disturbance on the south side. The address looked familiar, and when Raymond pulled up, his stomach dropped. It was 2 buildings down from the Washington apartment. A man was standing on the sidewalk, yelling up at a second-floor window. He was maybe 35, visibly upset, pacing back and forth. A woman's voice was shouting back from inside the apartment. Neighbors were watching from their windows and doorways. Raymond approached slowly, his hand nowhere near his weapon. That was different from before. The old Raymond would have assessed the threat level first, positioned himself for safety, treated the man as dangerous by default. "Hey there," Raymond said calmly. "I'm Officer Cole. What's going on?" The man spun around, his face red with anger and tears. "Stay back. This is between me and my girl." "I understand. But the neighbors are worried. How about we talk about it?" "There's nothing to talk about. She's leaving me. Taking my daughter." Raymond could see the pain behind the anger. This wasn't a criminal. This was a man whose world was falling apart. "That sounds really hard," Raymond said, taking a small step closer. "Breakups are tough, especially when kids are involved. You don't know anything about it." "You're right. I don't know your situation, but I know what it feels like when things fall apart. When you feel like you're losing everything that matters." The man looked at Raymond, really looked at him, and some of the fight went out of his shoulders. "What's your name?" Raymond asked. "Kevin." "Kevin, I'm Ray. Can we sit down and talk for a minute?" "Just you and me?" Before Kevin could answer, Raymond heard a familiar voice. "Everything okay out here, officer?" It was Trevor, walking up from the direction of his grandmother's building. He must have heard the commotion. Raymond's first instinct was to tell Trevor to go home, stay out of police business. But then he remembered what Dorothy had said about ripples, about change starting with one person seeing things differently. "Actually," Raymond said, "maybe you could help. This is Kevin. He's going through a tough time." Trevor looked surprised but stepped forward. "Hey, Kevin, I'm Trevor. I live right over there." "I don't need a crowd," Kevin said, but his voice had lost its edge. "Not a crowd. Just neighbors," Trevor said. "Look, man, I don't know what's happening, but whatever it is, it's not worth catching a charge over. Trust me on that." Kevin looked between Raymond and Trevor, then slowly sank down to sit on the curb. He put his head in his hands. Raymond sat down next to him. Not too close, respecting his space. Trevor sat on his other side. "She says I'm not good enough," Kevin said quietly. "Says I don't make enough money. Don't give our daughter enough attention. Says she's done trying." "That's gotta hurt," Raymond said. "I work 2 jobs. I'm doing the best I can, but it's never enough." "Have you told her that?" Trevor asked. "Like really talk to her about it?" "She won't listen. Every time I try to talk, it turns into a fight." Raymond thought about his own marriage. How many times he'd come home too tired to really listen to Linda. How many conversations they'd missed because he was too wrapped up in being right. "Kevin, can I be honest with you?" Raymond said. "A few months ago, I made a huge mistake at work. Hurt someone bad because I didn't listen, because I thought I knew better, and it cost me almost everything." Kevin looked up, surprised that a cop was admitting to making mistakes. "What I learned is that sometimes we get so caught up in our own pain, we forget other people are hurting too. Maybe your girl isn't saying you're not good enough. Maybe she's saying she needs something different. Something more." "I don't have more to give," Kevin said, his voice breaking. "Maybe it's not about giving more," Trevor said. "Maybe it's about showing up different. Being present even when you're tired. Really listening even when it's hard." They sat there on that curb for over an hour. Neighbors eventually went back inside. The woman in the apartment stopped yelling. And slowly Kevin started to talk. Really talk. About how scared he was of losing his daughter. About feeling like a failure. About not knowing how to fix things. Raymond didn't arrest anyone that night. Didn't write a single report. He just listened and talked and tried to help a man see that destroying things wouldn't fix anything. Eventually, Kevin agreed to go stay with his brother for the night. Give everyone space to cool down. In the morning, he'd try to have a real conversation with his girlfriend. No yelling, no accusations, just honest talk. After Kevin left, Trevor walked back toward his grandmother's building with Raymond. "That was different," Trevor said, "from how cops usually handle these calls." "Yeah, I'm trying to do things different now. I could tell. The old you would have just arrested him or told him to move along." Raymond nodded. "The old me saw people as problems to solve. Now I'm trying to see them as people going through problems." They stopped outside the Washington building. Through the window, Raymond could see Dorothy in her chair reading under a lamp. "You know what's crazy?" Trevor said. "When you arrested me, I thought you were the worst kind of cop. The kind who didn't care, who just saw what he wanted to see. I was that kind of cop. But you changed. And tonight, watching you with Kevin, I realized something. You're showing other people how to change too. That's bigger than just fixing your own mistake. Raymond felt emotion tighten his throat. Your grandmother said something about ripples, about one person changing and affecting others. I'm trying to be that ripple. You are, Trevor said. I saw it tonight. You changed how that situation went down, and I learned something watching you. Maybe that's the ripple. Maybe I'll handle something different someday because I saw how you handled tonight. They shook hands, and this time it felt like real friendship. Not just forgiveness or tolerance, but actual connection. Raymond drove home thinking about Kevin, hoping he'd be okay. Hoping the conversation would stick. Hoping he'd choose talking over fighting. At home, Linda was waiting up. She could always tell when he'd had a hard call. Want to talk about it? She asked. Raymond told her everything. About Kevin, about Trevor showing up, about sitting on a curb and just being human with someone who was hurting. You did good, Linda said. The Ray I married 12 years ago would have handled that so differently. The Ray from 12 years ago wouldn't have even seen Kevin as a person. Just another disturbance call. But you're not that Ray anymore. No, I'm not, and I'm glad. Monday morning, Raymond was at the community center running a workshop for new officers. He'd volunteered to train them on de-escalation and community engagement. Most of the veteran officers thought it was a waste of time, but Raymond had 8 young recruits sitting in front of him eager to learn. Let me tell you about the worst arrest I ever made, Raymond began, and he told them about Trevor, about the pills, about Dorothy, about every mistake he'd made and everything he'd learned. The recruits listened with wide eyes. This wasn't the kind of training they expected. The point isn't that you won't make mistakes, Raymond said. You will, we all do. The point is learning to see people first. Before you see a suspect or a threat or a problem, see the person. One young officer raised her hand. But what about officer safety? We're trained to assess threats. Officer safety is crucial, Raymond agreed. But fear can't be your default setting. Most people you encounter aren't threats. They're just people having a bad day. Or a bad year. Or a bad life. Your job is to make it better, not worse. After the training, Captain Rodriguez pulled Raymond aside. I've been getting feedback about your workshops, Rodriguez said. Raymond braced himself for criticism. Officers who've gone through your training, they're getting fewer complaints. Better community relationships. I want you to expand the program. Train more officers. Raymond felt something lift in his chest. It was working. The change was spreading. That Saturday, Raymond showed up at the Washington apartment with dinner. He did that sometimes now. Just brought food and they'd all eat together like family. Dorothy was having a good day. Her oxygen turned down low, color in her cheeks. Trevor had news about a promotion at work. They sat around the table laughing at Trevor's story about a mishap with a forklift. I'm proud of you boys, Dorothy said suddenly, looking between them. Both of you. Look how far you've come. Raymond thought back to that November night when he'd pulled Trevor over. If someone had told him then that he'd be sitting here now eating dinner with the man he'd arrested, he would have thought they were crazy. I'm proud of us too, Trevor said, raising his water glass. To second chances. To learning from mistakes, Raymond added, raising his own glass. To becoming better, Dorothy said, her eyes twinkling. They clinked glasses, and Raymond felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting or moving on, but the peace of doing the work. Of facing what he'd done wrong and building something better from it. His phone buzzed. A text from one of the young officers he'd trained. Just de-escalated my first domestic call using what you taught me. Nobody got arrested. Everybody got help. Thank you. Raymond showed the text to Trevor and Dorothy. That's the ripple, Dorothy said softly. That's what I was talking about. You changed, so you changed that young officer, so they changed how that family's night went, and it keeps going. Raymond looked at this woman who had every reason to hate him, who instead had shown him grace and pushed him to be better. He looked at Trevor, who had turned pain into wisdom and anger into growth. Thank you, Raymond said, for giving me a chance to be better, for not giving up on me. We didn't do it for you, Trevor said with a slight smile. We did it for all the other people you're going to help because you learned this lesson. Then I won't let you down, Raymond promised. And every day after that, he kept that promise. Not perfectly. He still made mistakes, still had moments of doubt, still struggled with old instincts, but he never stopped trying, never stopped seeing people, never stopped being grateful for the mistake that had broken his heart open and taught him how to be the kind of officer he should have been all along, the kind who served everyone, who protected everyone, who saw everyone, the kind who understood that a badge wasn't armor to hide behind. It was a responsibility to live up to. One person, one moment, one choice at a time.